My name is Sara Smith. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a professor of history at American River College, and today's date is April 11th, 2023. So let's start off by establishing some of the basics. What's your full name? What are your pronouns? And what's your date of birth?
My full name is Felix Hood. My pronouns are he, him, and my date of birth is July 12th, 2004.
Okay, tell me a little about yourself. What are your interests and hobbies? What do you like to do?
Right now, I just like watching movies, but I also sometimes go to conventions and I dress up in cosplay, and I really like doing that. And I also draw sometimes when I'm in the mood, but that's like usually like once like every month, so I'm very, very rusty at drawing.
So you said you like movies. What kind of movies do you like?
I really, really like animation, especially like one of my favorites is How to Train Your Dragon. Specifically, I really like I just really like art, like just like looking at it, and animation is just stunning, especially with like movies like How to Train Your Dragon and like Into the Spider-Verse and the Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Like I just like looking at it visually, and I like the stories because usually when it comes to like non-animated movies, I feel like they can take themselves too seriously, and I don't want like a serious movie. I want to have like fun while watching it.
And you said you're interested in cosplay. Can you
I
elaborate a little bit?
I am. I started cosplaying like I would say in the start of COVID, but I've been like going to conventions since way before that because my brother was really into anime, so then he brought me to conventions, and then I got into anime, and usually that leads to getting into cosplay. As of right now, though, I don't cosplay anime. I cosplay comic book characters, and I usually only cosplay male characters.
So can you tell me how you identify with regard to your social identities, broadly speaking? Race, class, sexual orientation, gender identity, so on.
Specify more with that question.
So social identities based on race, right? Ethnicity, so I'm white and I was born in the United States, but my grandparents are immigrants, for instance. My sexual orientation, lesbian. My gender identity, I identify as a woman, but gender nonconforming.
Okay.
Class status, currently middle class, grew up working class, so that's what I mean.
Oh, okay. I was a little confused, sorry. I'm very bad with words. Okay, so I'm very clearly white, and I grew up in like an upper middle class family, and I've been identifying as bisexual since I would say like 6th grade, and I've been a trans man since I figured out I was a trans man in 8th grade, and then I came out freshman year-ish, like middle of freshman year. I don't know. And I can't think of anything else to say to that question.
So you came out, do you remember how old were you when you came out as bi?
To friends, I never officially came out. I just started like talking about it, and like I never like had like a coming out because like all my friends were gay. So we just kind of were like, yeah, we're all bisexual. So I never really came out of like being gay, but obviously I had to come out being trans because that's, I feel like, a completely different story.
So can you say a little bit more about what that experience was like coming out? You said you came out when you were a freshman, you mean in high school?
Yes, a freshman in high school. I came out first to, I think, my sister, if I remember correctly. And then like right after my best friend at the time, and then it took me a while to come out to my mom. I've never come out to my dad as trans, because he wouldn't understand, because he thinks that being gay and trans are the same thing. So I just kind of ignore it and I don't come out to him. But I've come out to my mom, but she doesn't like acknowledge it. Like I've come out to her 3 times, once in freshman year, I think like once in sophomore and one in junior. And she just every single time doesn't acknowledge it afterwards. And I'm like, okay. So like she knows I'm trans, she knows my name, she just doesn't acknowledge it per se.
So when did you move to Roseville? Recently?
In August.
And did you move up here with your sister?
Yes, just my sister and her cat.
Mm-hmm. And can you say a little bit more about your relationship with your sister? Are you totally out to her, and how does she respond?
Yeah, we're totally out to each other. We tell each other basically everything because we're twins and we lived in the same room for 18 years until we moved out. And now, so there was really no hiding anything, even if we wanted to. She came out as gay long before I did. I would say probably like in elementary school, she knew she was gay, and like, so there's never been really like a disconnect because she's always been more open than I was.
So can you tell me a little bit more about what it means to you to be a trans man? What does trans masculinity mean to you? And do you think you would distinguish between trans masculinity and cis masculinity, if you would?
So I don't really know how to describe trans men, just because it's such like a wide variety for so many people. For me, I want to get like the closest I can get to being cis, but I know that's not for everybody. So I think it's definitely different because obviously I'm never going to have the cis experience, but I try to have one. But for some other people, that's not a thing. And the difference between trans masculinity and cis masculinity is obviously one has privilege and one doesn't. No matter if I feel like if a trans person has like completely, like a trans masculine person is completely transitioned, we're to the point like they're almost unrecognizable from not being cis, they're still gonna always have that with them because they could never fully escape the trans experience because they had to start from somewhere. So there's obviously like a big disconnect because most trans kids don't transition until later in life. So cis masculinity is like different when growing up with trans masculinity because like cis people in their masculinity get to do whatever they want to, but trans masculinity, they have to be set to these certain amount of rules. Like trans masculinity, I know some people are like, oh, if you're trans masculinity, you can't dress feminine, but a cis man can do that. So there's obviously like a huge disconnect for a lot of people.
So maybe can you talk a little bit about what being bisexual means to you?
There's not really, it doesn't really mean much to me. Just because I am a very laid back person with my decisions, and it kind of reflects in my sexuality. Like I literally can't decide anything in my life, so it kind of reflects in my sexuality, and I just kind of chose the word bisexuality because that's what was given to me at the time. Because when I I was like, okay, I like anything. Like I literally, as long as they're a good person, I'll date them. And some people see that as pansexuality, but I just say bisexuality because that's what I grew up with, because I didn't know about pansexuality until like after I already started identifying as bisexuality. So I just kind of chose it and went along with it.
So what does it feel like emotionally to have figured out your identity? Do you feel happy and empowered in your identity as bi and trans?
Since bisexuality didn't really affect me, it didn't really matter. Like, I don't feel a difference when I discovered I was bi and me being out to when I wasn't, because before I started identifying as bi, I wasn't really even dating anyone at the time, so it didn't matter. But for me being trans, there was definitely a big difference because I've always felt uncomfortable with myself, and you know, I would just have to pretend to be like a tomboy. So then when I finally found like something that I could do about it, like being a trans man and finally like helping myself, I was like, okay, so there's like steps I can take to being who I truly want to. And that's like the first step is identifying as a trans man and like coming out as a trans man.
So how old are you again? You're 19?
I'm 18.
18, okay. So what do you think some next steps might be for you in your sort of developing your identities?
I haven't really thought about transitioning medically, just because I don't really think I'm at that point yet, because I'm trying to focus on what I want to do with my life besides transitioning medically. So I'm really struggling like what I want to do as a job, but I also have to take into an account like I do want to transition medically, and some jobs or some careers that might be a struggle to do both at the same time. So I've just kind of been like struggling on like I have to like choose a career, and that career can lead to me medically transitioning.
Are you worried that if you medically transition earlier, you'll have trouble establishing yourself in a career? Like it'll be more difficult to find work? Can you explain that a little bit more?
I mainly, like, I know for a lot of careers, it's already hard to be a woman in that career, and being a trans man is even worse. So I want to choose a career that I know is going to allow me to transition medically, because I can't like physically and like money wise do it right now. So I want to be able to get a career that's going to allow me to do essentially both at the same time, because I can't do like one before the other.
Oh, so is money an issue for you right now when you think about transition?
In transition, yes, essentially because my dad essentially pays for everything. My mom does not work and my dad owns his own business. So all the money I get is from my dad, and I don't work right now because I'm trying to focus on school and I'm trying to focus on finding a career. So all the money I get is from my dad, and the only way I can transition medically without going into debt is if I convince him, but I don't think I can convince him at this time.
Okay, so I think I would like to ask a few more questions about family. What was life like growing up with your family? Very general question.
I mean, I was trying to think of like how to answer that. I mean, obviously we're upper middle class rich for like a big portion of my life. And that has to do with like my dad mainly, because he has started multiple businesses and they've all been pretty successful. So I've always grew around money.
So have you ever had to work?
I worked in my senior year just because everyone else was working. I've never needed to work because my parents have always paid for everything, which is really nice. I worked in my senior year just to get some like extra cash, and because everyone else was kind of getting a job, so I kind of felt like I needed to. But it was only for like not even a year. I think it was almost a year, but I think it was about like 8 months, a little bit.
Where did you work?
I worked at Claire's in the mall right next to my house, and I did not pierce ears. I was not able to because I did not turn 18 at the time.
And so what was it like being trans while at work, working at Claire's?
I wasn't out at Claire's just because my mom came into that workplace. Like, she always came into the mall, so I didn't want to be out and use like my chosen name and stuff, so I just got dead name there. which was a good thing because I found out later on that one of my coworkers was severely transphobic after she quit. So thank God I wasn't out there because that would have been terrible.
But what did it feel like working there for, you said about 8 months or so, and not being out?
I guess it kind of sucked because like they always, because it was a team of all girls, so we didn't have like any other men, so they like always talked about like, oh, it's like a team of girls, and I'm like, I'm not a girl. And I've thought about coming out to like my favorite coworker who was like the one I felt like deeply connected to, but then I just never did because I was like, what's the point, because I'm never gonna see her because I moved. So, and she was older than me, but she was best friends with the really transphobic girl. So I was like also debating that because I was like, oh, if I come out to her, she might tell the other coworker, and the other coworker can like, I wouldn't say that she would be a danger to me, but she would probably give me like the side eye or something, I don't know, or like talk shit about me behind my back.
Did you ever worry that you would be fired if you came out?
No, because California, I feel like it does a pretty good job with not discriminating based on their laws, and the one that was transphobic wasn't like the hiring manager, so she couldn't even do anything if she wanted to, and the manager I did have, I feel like probably would have been pretty accepting too.
Do you feel like not being out affects how close you feel or you felt to your coworkers?
I definitely felt like there was like a disconnect there because like I couldn't truly be myself. Like I had to like hide and stuff in a way. Like it would just be times where like I had to like hide myself, and like at the time I had a partner, and like technically we would be in a gay relationship because it was a male, but they saw it as a straight relationship because they saw me as a female. So like there was definitely like a disconnect when talking about like partners and like having like a close relationship.
Did it feel like your queerness was being erased in the process?
Yeah, I feel like it definitely was, because it was a gay relationship. They just didn't know it was a gay relationship. So that definitely erased like my side of like being gay. But since I'm bisexual, I feel like it didn't affect me that much too, because I also am okay with being in a straight relationship. It just kind of felt weird how they viewed it as straight, but like I viewed it as gay.
So do you have any disabilities?
I have a reading disability. It's like dyslexia, but it's not dyslexia. I don't know what it's called because no one ever told me. They just told me like I see a disconnect in like complete words instead of like letters like dyslexia. So like I would constantly have like trouble like with reading and taking notes, and I had a really big trouble with vocabulary, and I had an IEP, so I was constantly being taken out of class to go to IEP classes. And then I don't know if it counts as a disability, but I also was diagnosed with really bad sensory issues as a child, and they didn't really do anything about it besides put me in therapy when I was like a baby, and they were like, oh, you're fixed, but I wasn't really fixed.
So do your disabilities, sounds like they must impact how you are as a student in the classroom. Is that true, or?
Yeah, I've learned to manage like my reading disability since I've lived with it all my life. I don't really notice a difference. It's just a noticeable difference when people read my writing, because my writing is really bad, because in turn I have like really bad spelling and really bad grammar, and it doesn't affect me because I can read it fine, but it affects other people and they can't read my stuff. But besides that, I don't think my reading disability affects me that much as my sensory issues do, because my sensory issues like are in play every single day. Like if I touch something wrong, like it freaks me out.
Oh, can you elaborate a little bit? How do your sensory issues, maybe just talk about your sensory issues a little bit more, but do you think they impact you as a student? So what do they do? Yeah, how do they impact you as a student?
I feel like they definitely impact me as like a student, because like I know a lot of times in like high school, I wouldn't like want to go to the bathroom because if I wash my hands and then touch paper almost immediately after, I would freak out. So like I would specifically try to hold off to go to the bathroom until like I know I wasn't going to touch paper anymore, which could have been a long time because I like to write on paper in class. So like that definitely affected like my schoolwork. And then also when I'm working, sometimes like I can't have anyone else like talking. It needs to be complete silence when I'm working on like something really hard. And since I was in IEP classes, a lot of the people were really loud in there for some reason because the teachers just didn't do anything about it. So I had to like always be wearing like noise canceling headphones, and like I could be listening to my own music, but I can't be listening to like outside noises. So I would put on music to try to like drown out the noise because like I couldn't work.
Okay, do you think that ARC could do anything to be more accommodating to you based on your disabilities? And maybe for disabled students in general, anything you notice?
I haven't. I know I can use my IEP if I go to the office, but I haven't really gone to them just because I've heard that they can't really do much about it because it's not enforced like high school is, where like if the teachers don't follow your IEP, like they go to jail. But in college, it's not really enforced. So I feel like in like ARC or just in like colleges in general, I feel like they should be enforced by law to follow IEPs. Because that would be great for like a lot of people with just like disabilities in general, like even no matter how small they are, because now it just seems pointless to transfer my IEP over if a lot of teachers don't even have to follow it.
Oh, okay. So let's talk about education a little bit. Well, before we move on to education, is there anything else you would like to add with regard to your disabilities?
Not that I can think of, no.
I mean, I guess one question I could ask is, how do you think your disabilities interact with, influence your identity as trans, vice versa? Do you think there's a relationship there at all?
With the one that I'm diagnosed with, no. I do think I might have autism, and if I do have autism, that would definitely affect my identity because I know they've done research with autism, and they found out that people who are autistic are more likely to be trans or non-conforming just because the brain doesn't work the same way as non-autistic people would think about gender.
Maybe can you say a little bit more about that? So you say if you're autistic?
So if I'm autistic, I feel like it would, because how I think is very aligned to how I've been told autistic people think, where like I don't view gender and sexuality the same as like if I was talking with like a non-autistic person. Like I it's kind of hard to explain because if I do have autism, then I've never experienced life without it. So it's really hard for me to explain it. Like I can't really like put it into words besides like I'm trying to think. I can't think of words to explain it.
That's okay. But you haven't been diagnosed with autism, but you think you might.
I've been told by multiple autistic people that I'm most likely autistic, and I've taken like an old test they used to test with. They no longer test it, but it's like the old test before they changed it, which isn't really that good because that test was ableist and sexist. But I did it just to see like a baseline, and it was like, oh, like you would qualify for it. But now that the criteria has changed, I'm not too sure, obviously, because I've never been to a psychiatrist or a therapist.
Okay, so I want to transition, if that's okay, to talking about education a little bit more. So, can you tell me about your educational journey from high school to the present?
Um, I know my educational journey has been really different than most people because I was an IEP. So mine's been like really, really different because my entire educational journey has been dictated by teachers and advisors. So I couldn't really choose what I wanted to. I mean, technically I could because by law they can't tell me what to do, but they would heavily encourage things. So I've always been like off track from other students. Like I know in I was going into freshman year, I wanted to take bio to get it over with. And I was pretty good at bio. I wasn't bad at science like at all. But since I was an IEP, they told me that they advised I wouldn't take it freshman year because it'd be too hard for me. Obviously, they couldn't say I flat out no, but they were pressuring me very hard not to like do bio in freshman year or like take normal math. So I've been like farther behind than most students.
And can you talk some about your experience being bi and trans in high school? Did teachers know? Did they support you? What was your experience with teachers?
I never fully came out as trans to any teachers or to most of the student body because I'm pretty sure in the state of California they can't tell your parent if you come out to them, but I was worried that might be different since I was an IEP. So I was worried like, oh, if I'm an IEP, they have to tell my parent like everything because since with an IEP, you know, like they're always constantly monitoring me. So I never told my teachers, but a lot of my teachers would be supporting because they did have forms we filled out every year that would be like, oh, what's your name and pronouns? And I did see like one of my IEP teachers like defend another trans student. So I definitely feel safe around them to coming out. I was just scared that like somehow they would have to tell my parent. And since like I wasn't being fully supported by my mom, I was just afraid that they would go back to her and tell her. But I didn't feel like super unsafe. I was just like, I didn't really tell them, if that makes sense.
Did you witness any transphobia or homophobia while a high school student?
A lot. Since I grew up in a very conservative town, a lot of people were homophobic and transphobic, and there's like so many instances I can think of. Like I had a trans student in my class, and I overheard like a lot of kids misgendering him and like calling him by his old name when he left the classroom. And the teacher did defend him and like told them to like knock it off, but they didn't send them to the principal's office or anything because they were IEP students. So IEP students can get a lot like away with homophobia and transphobia because they were like, oh, well, since they have a mental disability, they can get away with saying all this stuff without like getting truly in trouble.
Is there any particular, like, is there another example that you can think of from high school of a teacher being transphobic?
I can't think of any instances of the teachers being homophobic or transphobic, just because a lot of them couldn't say really anything, because they were on like, we had like really strict rules about, they had really strict rules about what the teachers could say. So none of teachers, it was mainly just from like students and then like teachers not really doing much about it, but they never actually said anything. They just didn't really do much about it.
What was the bathroom situation like at your high school? Were there all gender bathrooms? Was there harassment in bathrooms?
So we had really bad bathroom issues all throughout high school. We only had one non-gendered bathroom, but it was locked up until my junior year because kids would vape in it, and so they had to like lock it until you can you would have to go up to the office and get a key if you wanted to use it. Just because other kids ruined it for the kids that actually needed it. But they did finally decide to open it up, I think, technically junior year, but no one was really on campus then. It was only, I think, for some students if you chose to be, and through senior year. And I used it in senior year, but there was only one, so it's only if I was close to it. And every time I went to it, there was probably a kid vaping in there, so they still misused it, and they probably have closed it now again because of that reason. And the rest of the bathrooms were just kind of terrible because I only used the female restrooms. I refused to go in the male's restroom just because I wasn't fully out. And even like the females' bathrooms were like destroyed because kids would like vape, or like literally we had bathrooms like being destroyed.
So did any of your classes in high school cover trans or queer topics at all?
The only one that I can think of was my freshman year health class, and it was like a small portion. I think by California curriculum they had to do that, so I don't think that was her choice. And it was very small and very weird. Most of it was like one side of the room would be disagree, one side of the room would be agree, and she would put up these like phrases, and some of the phrases were really weird. Like I know one of them was like, oh, do you think LGBTQ people are still oppressed? And like obviously they are, but some people would go to the disagree, and she would allow them to speak, and they would say like openly homophobic and transphobic things in front of the class, but she couldn't really do much about it because that was the whole assignment. But I mean, that assignment was kind of great a little bit, just because like all the people who were homophobic and transphobic kind of got outed, so I could stay away from them. But it was also really weird and kind of made like you feel a little bit unsafe, because like you're really realizing like how many people around you like don't like your identity. And I wasn't like out fully to school just because no one really knew me. I was like a quiet kid in the back of class, so it didn't really matter. But like I was like, okay, well, like now I know who to stay away from, but like also that's a lot of people, like more than I thought would say this type of stuff.
Do you remember how you felt during that lesson plan?
I felt really mad, and I wanted to like debate or like smack the homophobic and transphobic people, because like their ideology is like so stupid, and it just really makes me mad, and I get kind of mad off of that really easily. But I'm a very shy person in front of like the whole class, so I didn't really say anything, but other people did. So the people that were defending trans people and gay people, that made me feel really good that some people were at least, you know, being nice and being good people when like I couldn't like defend myself, essentially.
So how do you think your identity as queer or trans impacted the learning environment in general for you? Like you said, you were quiet. You were a somewhat more quiet student in the back of the classroom. Is there any relationship there between the two, or did it impact how you learn, I guess, just in general?
I wouldn't say it impacted how I learned, but I definitely didn't talk to most of my classmates because since majority of the IEP classes I was in, majority of the people would be the same people literally throughout my entire high school years. And I knew like most of them were like transphobic and homophobic, or like racist too. And like I did not want to be near those people. So oftentimes I had like 0 friends in class just because like I didn't want to talk to those people. And like, you know, if they ever found out like if I was trans or gay, like that would have been bad for me. So I feel like it definitely affected like my social, but not really like my learning, because I just kind of ignored them and just did my own work.
Were there any student clubs for queer students?
There was an LGBTQ club, but I never joined it because a lot of the people in the club were still bad people, and a lot of them actually in the club defended this guy who sexually assaulted my friend. So I did not want to be there near them either, so I couldn't even get near them because they, for some reason, decided to defend sexual assaulters.
That's awful.
Yeah.
Okay, so where do you currently attend college?
I currently attend college to American River Community College.
Actually, is there anything else you want to say about your high school years that I haven't asked that seems important to say?
There's not really anything important else to say, I feel like, about my high school in terms of, like, gay and transness. The school had a lot of other problems, so that's because it was, like, in a conservative bubble town.
Okay, so you said you attend American River College. What do you study, or are you hoping to study?
I was studying to be in funeral services, but I just recently dropped out, like, in the beginning. Like, literally a day before the semester started. And I don't really know what I want to major in yet, so I'm just doing my general ed. I don't even have, like, ideas of what I want to do. I might come back to funeral services if I feel ready, but I just decided to drop out because I feel like it didn't really align with me right now, and it was very stressful and it was very strict, and I just couldn't handle that right now.
So do you have some ideas of what you might end up majoring in? Or you're just sort of exploring and you're unsure still?
I'm just kind of exploring. Before I chose to be funeral services, I was going to do art. And I'm still having art as maybe a backup plan. But when I have art in, like, a non-hobby way, I usually get really, really frustrated, and it's just not good for my mental health, especially being in, like, art classes with people who are significantly better for me. And I feel like in a job setting that probably wouldn't be good for my mental health. But also, I know I've explored, like, maybe teaching an art class, like teaching other people art. But besides that, I don't really have, like, any other clue.
So are you currently part-time or a full-time student?
I am a part-time student.
Is that because you dropped some of your classes at the beginning of the semester, or are you planning on continuing to be part-time?
I was part-time last semester, just because I was easing into being in college, so I wanted to, like, find out, like, what I, like, just was easing into it. This semester, since I dropped out of all my classes, there was really nothing else available, so I was just kind of getting what I wanted out of, like, the few general ed classes that I could, so I'm only taking 3 classes this semester.
So do you think your queerness will end up influencing what you study and maybe what you end up doing in your career?
Most definitely, like as I've talked about before, like, my transness is definitely going to influence what career I choose, just because some careers are more open to me being trans than others. And one of the reasons also, like, I dropped out besides, like, of the funeral service, besides, like, my mental health, is, like, they're very strict in funeral service and they're very conservative. And, like, they were very restricting, and that was, like, besides, like, my mental health and it being just a lot, like, I was also thinking, like, how is my transition gonna go in this, like, very strict community that's, like, really conservative? And even though there's, like, non-conservative funeral homes out there, most are, and it's really hard to find a job for if you're, like, anything outside of, like, the normal, like, box of being, you know, like, cis.
So how does it feel to have maybe decided not to major in funeral services, and maybe that will be your career when that's what you intended? You moved from Pleasanton to come to ARC specifically for the funeral services program, right?
Yeah, it is kind of a lot. Like I was debating, like, whether or not I should do it. And then when like it just kind of like built up until like I got to the orientation, and then I got to the orientation and I was like, wow, I really cannot do this right now. And it was like a lot for me, especially because like I moved all the way out here just for that. And now that I'm not going to do that again unless I pick it up in the future, like that was a lot for me. But I've come to also realize that like I was going to move out most likely anyways, and where I'm at right now is actually cheaper, is cheaper, like me going to community college and my apartment is cheaper than if I went straight to a 4-year for a different major. So that's kind of like eased my anxiety about like wasting all this time moving out here.
Okay, can you talk some about your experience taking courses? So wait, you started American River College in the fall, right?
Mm-hmm.
2022. So what have your experiences been taking courses that either wholly or in part touch on queer trans topics?
So the only class that I have taken that touches on queer topics is my women history class, just because the rest were like bio and math, so they weren't really focusing on anything. I took a funeral service history class, but there was no need to focus on queer history just because like they were talking about like the different ways that people did funerals. But my women's history class is like the first history class since literally forever, because all my other history classes never talked about this, but like talked about like queer history and actually like acknowledged that like queer people have been here the entire time. They've just been in hiding or used different words. So it's definitely like, even though I already knew like all this stuff, like it's been like just, I don't know, better that someone's finally talking about it in a class instead of just me being like, oh, like I already knew this, I'm just gonna keep that in the back of my mind, but like it actually being like acknowledged.
So do you feel like you've had to learn about queer history on your own time, like in your own way?
I like to learn a lot. I used to be really into history when I was in middle school, and so I know a lot about history just because I always like learning about things I'm interested in, and I'm interested in queer history for the most part. I don't like, I wouldn't say actively look, but like I know like I'm always like coming across things about history, and I don't know, and I don't like scroll past or whatever, like I read it and like I listen to it and I watch like videos that just so happen to pop up like on my YouTube feed or like on other platforms, and I just like, I don't skip by it like most people would. Like I actually like to learn it.
So how does it feel in this women's history class, which you're currently taking? How does it feel when queer or trans topics are brought up?
I feel like it's really good. Like I feel like it's amazing, especially because I never really had that experience in high school, and I know that a lot of people also in the class like probably feel the same way, and so like usually when we're having discussions about like queerness, like that also too can help me find like more people on campus that are safe for me to hang out with. I feel like this class has really allowed me to like, even though I'm like really shy and I haven't really talked to somebody, like I feel safe in the class. Like I don't feel like there could be someone that would be unsafe for me to talk to, unlike in high school where like I wasn't, because yeah, I'm always watching people's faces and I can see how people react to like when you talk about queerness. So like I'm always watching people's faces, I'm very attentive, and like when you're in a class that doesn't talk about queerness, it's kind of hard to tell like what people's ideas are unless they say it out loud. But when you're in a class that talks about queerness, I can see who's like open and accepting, and like I can actually go talk to them if I wanted to.
Do you have the experience of students not expecting for there to be, for queer history to be talked about in a women's history class, or pushing back at all from other students? Any pushback?
On Rate My Professor, the class, This was so funny. On the Rate My Professor, because I like to check all the Rate My Professors, on this specific class, a lot of people complained about there being queer history. And I thought that was really funny because history is history. You can't erase just some parts of it. And a lot of people were complaining about it. So I knew going into the class that queer history was going to be talked about. And I was like, that's good. Like, that's good to be acknowledged. But also, like, there's so many people that, like, took it and was, like, shocked that someone was actually talking about this, which I find so weird because it's a history class.
So are there, and only talk about this if you feel comfortable, but are there currently any issues in that class with how queerness is addressed in the history, or like by other students, or how the professor approaches the topic?
I've never had a teacher talk about queerness in history before, but I would say it's a pretty good job. I mean, like, it's a low bar, but, like, it's good. Like, there's not really anything to go off of, but just talking about, like, a little bit is, like, the best I've ever been in.
So if you could take additional courses that focus entirely on queer or trans topics, is that something you would be interested in?
I thought about taking the queer history class.
Oh, the queer studies class?
The queer studies class. But since this was before I dropped out of my funeral service, I was going into this community college into thinking that I can only do my general ed and my required program classes. So I never, like, was planning on taking it because I didn't have time to take it. But now that I have time to take it, I might. I just would have to, like, think about, like, schedule wise to do it or not, like, if it fits into, like, my schedule of how many classes I can mentally take.
So did you know that Intro to LGBTQ Studies does cover some gen ed requirements?
I did a little bit, I think, but I was taking classes that my counselor recommended, and I was just kind of taking what he said would be, like, the easiest way to finish my general ed, if that makes sense.
So it's an issue of maybe the whole range of classes that could be offered to you to fulfill gen ed requirements not being talked about, essentially, or not being discussed.
Yeah, I don't blame the counselors for not, like, mentioning it a whole lot because I was only given, like, a 30-minute window to talk about my classes when I was supposed to be given an hour. So he was just kind of going over, like, all of, like, the easiest way to get your general ed because that's what I wanted. Because at the time I was going into funeral services and I could only fit so many general ed classes into each semester, like maybe like 2 or 1. So I was trying to get, like, oh, which ones fill those requirements the most. Like, I know, like, some classes, like, fill, like, 2 or 3 requirements. So I was trying to figure out, like, he was just telling me which ones were the easiest. And he probably should have suggested the other ones because I probably would have known or, like, kept it in the back of my mind. But I just literally told him, like, he told me exactly what classes to take and I literally just wrote that down.
So I think I asked you, would you be interested in taking classes that focus on queer and trans topics, right? And you said that you would be interested, but it's you would have to sort of fit into your educational plan in a way, you know? Is when I say, so Intro to LGBTQ Studies, what do you expect from a course like that? When you hear that, do you understand what it is, what it might be focused on?
I feel like it's just going to go more into depth about, like, the queer history that's probably talked about in women's history, because queerness is usually tied to the women's movement usually. So I feel like there'd be probably a lot of talking about that, but I don't really know much to be expected for that course just because there's not a course like that in high school. And I don't see anyone talking about that course in college because I really only have like one college friend, so I don't really know much about it. I just kind of know about it from the ARC Instagram page.
So have faculty in your other classes, have they made you feel included as somebody who is trans specifically? Have they done anything like do they have any practices to make you feel more included?
I know I feel a lot more included in college than I did in high school because now I'm actually able to go by my preferred name and pronouns. But also, I don't think teachers have access to my legal name, even if it's on my account. I think only just like the main administrative staff has that. So I definitely feel more included in that way, and I feel more like I can be myself, but I don't think any teachers, like in specific, besides women history, has really implanted things to make me, like specific things to make me feel safe in a way.
Have any other faculty, have any of your other professors talked about pronouns or mentioned pronouns in the class at all?
The only one that is like talked about pronouns was my bio teacher, but she was also queer. She has a wife, and I feel like that really implanted into like, I know she made sure like everyone would around the room saying like their pronouns and then like a hobby, and she was very open about her wife and her queerness, so that definitely felt safe. But since the bio class, she didn't implant much because she was mainly teaching bio, but like she got to be able to openly talk about her queerness. That kind of made me really like her and feel safe.
So what do you think faculty can do to make queer and trans students feel more included, safer, respected in the classroom in general?
I have never talked to the faculty before, so I don't know how serious they take accusations are, just because I've never had a teacher be homophobic or transphobic to me yet in this campus. So I've never had to like report somebody, because I definitely would if someone said something to me, because I'm very open about that kind of stuff, and I'll report somebody who needs to be reported. But I don't know how serious they take it here. But one thing that I can think of that they should maybe do is make the non-gendered bathrooms easier to find, because I know like they were so hard for me to find. Like I was struggling on like the first time I wanted to use the bathroom, because I didn't want to use the male or female bathroom, just because like I didn't want to like out myself to go inside the female bathroom, and like I didn't want to like get harassed in the male bathroom because it just feels uncomfortable in there. So like I was trying to find like the non-gendered bathrooms, and it was really hard to find, and I had a map out. And I'm bad at directions, but like it was super, super hard to find. And I sooner or later found one, and I've just been using that one bathroom the whole time that I've been here, because I just don't know where the other ones are. So I feel like they should definitely like include more, because I think there's definitely less than the gendered bathrooms, but there's maybe 3 to 4, and like I don't know where the rest are like at all. So I feel like the faculty should definitely implant more to make people who don't want to go in the gendered bathrooms feel more safe.
Do you sometimes not use the bathroom because it's a longer walk to get to the bathroom?
This semester, since I only have one class, I don't really use the bathroom like at all. But last semester, since it was one class after the other for a couple days a week, sometimes I wouldn't want to go to the bathroom because it was such like a long walk per se than it was to the gendered bathrooms. But we had like a 15-minute break, so usually I felt good enough about walking there, but sometimes I would be worried about being like late to class since I'm a slow walker.
Have you experienced harassment or discomfort in gendered bathrooms on campus?
I have only been in the male bathroom once, but I didn't experience any harassment. It was just really, really gross in there, so I just never went in there again. And the only reason why I went in there is because I didn't know that there was non-gendered bathrooms. And so I had to use it because I really had to go, and then I used it, and then I was like, I never want to go in there again, but I was like, I know I'm going to have to eventually use the bathroom, so then I finally looked to see where there was a non-gendered bathroom and finally found one.
So have you had experiences being misgendered in the classroom, either by faculty or by other students, or maybe by staff as well, outside of the classroom?
I don't think I've ever been misgendered, but I also don't talk to a lot of people. I know I've never been misgendered by faculty, but that's because I think on my account I have my pronouns, so I think they see that and know. But I don't know if I've ever been misgendered by other students, especially because I don't talk to many, but I would assume so just because I don't pass very well in terms of like most people, because like I get misgendered like off campus. Like I've never been misgendered. I mean, I've never been gendered correctly without telling somebody outside of campus. So I feel like I probably am misgendered by like people who don't know me.
So why do you think it's important to use the correct pronouns for trans and non-binary people?
It's obviously important because it makes people feel comfortable. I know for me, I know for some people, they don't really care if they get misgendered. And for me, I know definitely, it makes me super, super uncomfortable, even if they don't like mean to. And just, it's just better for people's comfort, especially because like if someone has like fully transitioned and they get misgender, they're not going to know that you're talking to them. Because I've heard stories about people who like trans men who have like full beards and they still get misgendered and they didn't know that that person was talking to them. So then it just causes confusion and discomfort. So it's just better if everyone just genders people correctly, no matter the circumstance.
So what do you think the best way is for best way to learn somebody's pronouns?
I think if you're talking in person, I think the best way is just to ask, or like just hear what other people are saying. If you're too awkward to ask, I know online a lot of people have their pronouns in their bio nowadays, from what I've seen. But I know like in person, it can be a little awkward for some people to like not know what gender they are. I know this has happened to me where like I didn't know what gender they were. So until I either asked them or figure it out, I would just use neutral pronouns and just use they them pronouns. So it's not to make like anyone uncomfortable, or I would just straight use their name if I didn't know. But I think the best course of action is just to ask. But I know some people are awkward, so I would advise people just to like listen to what other people are saying around them, like what their friends are calling them and stuff like that.
So you kind of answered this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, and you can feel free to tell me you've already answered it. What does misgendering feel like?
Like I said before, it's just like discomfort. I know it's probably different for most people, but to me, it just kind of feels like really wrong. Cause like usually, like 90% of my friends are girls, or feminine leaning. So every time I'm with them, I always get grouped up as like a bunch of ladies. And I think it's really, really awkward and uncomfortable, because especially like for me and then for like the other people around me, because it's just really, really weird to me. But I also know that like to most cis people, I don't pass, from what I've gathered, but it's just like really, really uncomfortable.
Is there anything in particular you'd like your faculty, your professors to do to make sure that misgendering doesn't happen in the classroom?
The best thing faculty can do is just by like having everyone to go around and say their pronouns, either that be by like a name tag or like everyone go around and say their name and pronouns for introductions, because I know a lot of people or a lot of teachers still do introductions where they like go around the classroom and you say one thing about themselves, but some teachers don't include pronouns. I know more are nowadays, but like now I feel like teachers should just like, if you're going to do an introduction thing, you should have them say their pronouns.
So I'm skipping around a little bit, but how important do you think it is to include queer and trans topics or queer and trans representation in the course curriculum for you personally to feel included and seen at ARC?
I feel like it's very, very important, especially because like if more people are being taught it in the curriculum, it's been proven that they're less ignorant, because if they hear it from a professional, usually like they're more likely to be tolerant than a non-professional. And if more people are taught, then more people feel safe around, you know, non-LGBTQ people. So I feel like it's like super, super important for just to everyone just feel safe.
So have you ever felt harassed or discriminated against because of your gender identity and sexual orientation while in college so far?
Besides the bathroom situation, no person has really like harassed me. I just feel like the bathroom situation could be better, and that's maybe a little apprehensive. But since I don't interact with a lot of people, because it's a lot different, I haven't really had like any like group projects, so it's really different than what high school was, where like I'm constantly interacting with people who are homophobic and transphobic. Now it's just kind of like I don't have to interact with anybody, so I haven't really faced harassment, but I probably will. I mean, there's probably a guarantee that I will, just because, you know, there's awful people everywhere.
Do you feel a little bit on edge sometimes, like apprehensive that you are going to experience some kind of like mistreatment?
Definitely. I mean, I'm always like, for every time I'm talking to a person that I don't know if like they're queer or tolerant, I'm definitely apprehensive, just because I'm usually very open about me being trans and bisexual. So I have to, before I even talk to them, really like know a person, like whether if they're queer or tolerant, just so I know that they're safe to talk to.
So you talked some about bathrooms, which is an important issue. Are there other things that you think the college should do to make trans and queer students feel more included on campus in general?
I know they should probably like post more ally stuff and like push more like the LGBTQ studies course. I think they should push that out more, and then I'm pretty sure there's an LGBTQ club. I think they should push that out more, because I don't really know like about much of those things besides maybe like the occasional like Instagram post. So I feel like they should like post more stuff around campus so that other students can see and find a community within the college easier.
So have you used any of the support services currently offered to queer and trans students at ARC?
I have not, just because I don't know much about them. And since I'm on campus for a very limited amount of time, I have not used them. I don't know if I will in the future, but they are really hard to find. And for me, at least, I know the website's very confusing, and it's just very hard to find the resources and like what exactly they do. So I haven't used any of it.
So, in general, if you think this, how do you think our campus reinforces the gender binary? And what do you think we could do to challenge the binary to be more inclusive of both trans and non-binary students? Thinking like culturally, use of language. You already talked about bathrooms.
I'm trying to think like what I've seen on campus, because I've only really been in like one section of the campus, because my classes just somehow always fall in that. I know, like, the really only thing that I feel like they do to help trans students is on the Los Rios part, where you're able to change your name and pronouns. But besides that, they really don't do anything to help. And I can't really think of ways they can. I just know that they probably should do more.
Have you ever been misgendered by the district or by sort of administrative services at all?
I know I've gotten a few emails. I don't know if this is a mess up or not, because some emails by the district or by, like, I don't want to call it spam mail, but like automated messages by the district, sometimes they'll like use the right name, and then sometimes they'll use my legal name, and sometimes it switches back and forth, and it's really confusing, because like, I don't know. I know I have my legal name on the account, so that's, I feel like, where they're getting it from. But I feel like they should really fix that issue, that, like, because I think it's like a glitch or something, maybe. I don't know where they're taking this information, but they're like sometimes using my legal name and then sometimes using my chosen name. So they really have to fix the issue where they're only using my chosen name. Because I think it's viewed as like a nickname, maybe, on the account. I'm not really too sure how it's viewed in like the technical side of the system.
So can you think of any ways that the campus could provide more support services for trans and queer students? Like, for instance, would you personally, considering what you've said, find value in the college offering legal and financial services for legal name change?
I feel like the college should definitely offer that, or at least teach people how to do that. The college should just like do more in terms of like putting the information out there, because I know they have resources already. It's just the information to find those resources is incredibly hard, and I don't know if that's on purpose or not, but like it isn't like posted everywhere, or it's like really hard to find on the website. So I feel like they should just, if they do have these resources, they should push it more.
So do you think trans and queer students could use a mental health counselor that specializes in helping them in particular?
Most definitely. I know with me and trying to find a personal therapist, I would want someone who is either trans or just queer in general, because a like person that's not in the LGBT community is not going to understand the issues or like the guidance that you need. And I know it's like very limited in like finding people who can do that, but they should really try, just because if I were to go to someone who's not going to understand my problems, then what's the point of like going?
So how important do you think queer community is for your own sense of well-being at the college?
I feel like it's very important, because I know that I'm going to want queer friends. And since most people find their friends for life in college, I feel like it's very important to find a sense of community, because that's how most people find their friends that will support them, and just like a community that will support them in general. So it's very, very important to just like mental health, to be around people who are going to understand you and understand your problems, and not just like look the other way.
So far, have you been able to find any queer community on campus? I know you haven't been here that long.
I have not found a community. I have made like a singular good friend that is part of the LGBTQ community. But I haven't really joined the community. I know there was a Discord server for the whole district, the community district, or the college district, just for LGBTQ students, but I haven't really talked on the server, just because a lot of them weren't in my age range, so I was just there's nothing for me to talk about really because they're just not in my age range. So besides that one friend, not really.
Okay, a couple of general questions. So, what makes you excited about learning in the classroom?
In what way?
Um, so what like motivates you to learn in the classroom? What do you like about the classroom experience? What interests you? What excites you? What motivates you?
What motivates me to learn? A lot of I don't. That's a mean way to say it. I don't like stupid people. Like people who don't like. Not necessarily because like people who like don't choose to learn or like just I just want to be someone that can like fully understand the world, and I like learning because I believe that learning in turn can make you a better person, because if you learn more about stuff, then obviously you're going to be like just a better person like overall, because history has always been connected with like teaching people how to be good people, and I feel like what motivates me is so that I can be like a better person.
And so, sort of a related question, what makes you excited about being a college student? What are you looking forward to the most?
What I was looking forward to the most when I was transferring from high school to college was that I was finally able to like be out fully, because I was able to change my name and my pronouns without like any questions asked on the website. And I was able to like use my right pronouns. So that's what I was most excited about, and I was most excited to like live on my own and also just choose any class I want, because now I'm not restricted by my IEP to only choose classes that they deem easy. So now I'm able to choose like any classes that I want to do.
One more specific question. So it occurred to me, this wasn't on my list of questions, but there's a Pride Learning community that's being formed. So it's a community of students who identify as queer or trans who will take the same classes. And those classes aren't all focused on queer topics, but there'll be classes with a disproportionate number of queer students in the learning community, or there'll be classes exclusively meant for queer students. Is that something that you would find of interest? You know, if it aligned with your general education goals?
Yes. I'm a very shy person, so like when meeting like such like with talking with such like a big community or like a group of people, I can get very like shy at first. I'm like really good with one-on-one people, but when it comes to like a community or like a group of people, I get a little scared. So I feel like if I finally like got over that anxiety and was able to like actually like join in terms of like my like schedule and my career goals, then I definitely would be interested, just because like that would probably help me mentally, because then I can fall back on people or like talk to people who are like actually like me.
Okay, anything else you'd like to add, or questions you'd like to return to, topics you'd like to return to?
Not that I can think of now.
Okay, I think that's all I've got. All right, thank you.